Angels and giants. Often I'm asked, Xavier Séguin of Eden Saga says, this question: are giants and angels the same? Giants are the sons of the previous humanities. They move flying. They are the servants of the former gods. Yes, for me, it's a certainty. The giants are angels, he says. Well, I totally disagree with him. First of all, the angels are bodiless, and they are helping mankind to find salvation. We each have a guardian angel once we're baptized, and we have been blessed to see such an angel in one of the baptisms that we had at our little church. We were taking pictures because we couldn't afford a photographer, of course, and we happened to see an angel. They don't have wings, by the way. They're created from uncreated light, and he was standing right next to the priest while the priest was reciting the exorcism prayers at the beginning of the Holy Sacrament of Baptism. And it looked that he was waiting for the priest to finish the reciting of the prayers, and we assumed that he would have been the little boy's guardian angel. And we told this little boy and everyone there at the church what we had seen. There are many times when people see angels during a person's baptism. They're told not to start overreacting, because this usually happens. But let's go into this. He means the fallen angels here. He means the Genesis giants, obviously. And let's go into what he says. He says, you know my work. You understood how I have laid a maximum of world's legends to dissect, study point by point, and compare them. Myths and legends are of great interest to me since childhood. I have been immersing myself in their systematic study for 40 years, mostly time to peel them. They nourished my soul as my body. For a long time I carried them inside, and for a long time they served as a dream frame. 10 years ago I gave birth to Eden Saga, chapter after chapter. I put online another history of humans based on unexplained or neglected facts linked to sacred texts and ancient myths. This is, of course, he writes this in French, and I guess he translates it into English. That's why sometimes the grammar it's off a little bit. But still we can get the idea of what he wants to say. He says, I discovered that the same facts are told by many legends. Of course, there are alterations according to the peoples, eras, and cultures. Each nation has located on its land such or such glorious fact of the past. All people wanted their gods to belong to them alone. And this is why the name, history, and birthplace of a particular god varies from one culture to the other. Each people relocates him to their homes. Each people has made him their only god, self and booked, forgetting, by the way, that the terraforming aliens originally came down from heaven for all men and all peoples of the world. The ego quarrels came later. The first of all myths tell the arrival on Earth of the gods from space. Their task was to terraform a planet, sow it, give birth to animals of all kinds, to crown their creation by adding intelligent beings enough to continue their work. Most traditions refer to these flying gods and their servants as angels. In the oldest version of the Persian, the first god was called Ahura Mazda. He descended from the skies, escorted by an army of flaming giants. The Persian mythology is the oldest because it contains the very first version of the myth of Noah and his ark. And this time it's not a question of surviving a deluge, but of surviving a terrible winter that must fall on the world and maintain its rigor for the large number of generations. The Persian Noah is called Yima. He dug an underground shelter that the legend calls a var. This var is Yima's ark. He hides all the animals by couples. All the seeds also find refuge there, and var has underground water, all the amenities to withstand the time it will take. We can recognize the endless winter that prehistorians and paleoclimatologists call the last ice age. Wurum in Europe, Wisconsin in Asia, in America. It lasted 100,000 years. The myths of Yima shows that the last ice age was planned and forecast, which gives the age of Yima around 110,000 years. Very clearly the oldest testimony about the former gods and their manners. After all, they were not models of peace and harmony. The legendary Hindu corpus tells us about the weapons of the gods, very modern destructive power. Some describe that they're reminiscent of atomic bombs. The Bible tells how Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed by the fire of heaven, and again it looks like an atomization. The ancient cities of the Indus Valley, and especially Mohenjo-Daro, bear the mark of atomization, in other words, nuclear bombs, still displaying a high level of radioactivity there. Now, this province was part of the Empire of Rama, which is said to support a terrible war against the Asvins. Whence the legitimate question, would not the last ice age be a nuclear winter? Would not the great war of the gods against the giants have been settled by atomic bombs? Would not the salty lakes that dot the globe of their desert, where nothing grows, be the vestiges of nuclear vitrification? It's urgent to reread all these old texts differently. They have much more to tell than we have believed so far. In the Slavonic version of his book, Patriarch Enoch himself expresses as follows, quote, "My children, listen, my last day is near, my last hour is coming. Already the angels who are coming with me are before me. To leave you, they must do their work. Tomorrow I will leave you. I must go to heaven to find the heavenly Jerusalem, which will be my residence for eternity." End quote. And there's a link here to the source. The text that reads as follows, quote, "I have to leave for a great journey, which I fear not to come back in. From my initiators, the giants will show me how to equip me and settle in the ship that will take us tomorrow for the artificial planet Hyperborea, where I would live forever in the company of the giants and their revered chief." End quote. That's what he describes it as being. A supreme god who, as I have shown, he says, was a great goddess named Hathor. Great she was by her wonderful work, the terraforming of our planet with the development of its animal plant species, landscaping to give the beautiful harmony we know today. But Hathor was tall too. Hathor and the Olympian gods measured about 14 meters in height, that's over 12 feet tall. But the giants or angels of the first generation, called Cyclops, were more than 50 meters tall, that's over 150 feet in height. The book of Enoch also says, quote, "When Enoch stopped speaking, the Lord spread darkness over the earth to cover Enoch and all around him, and Enoch rose up to heaven, the highest where God is. The Lord received him and placed him in front of his face, and it was at this moment that the darkness withdrew from the earth, and the light reigned again." I will read instead, "When Enoch stopped speaking, the goddess ship cast its shadow on the earth to cover Enoch and all around it, and then Enoch was abducted by that craft and led into the sky to the ground. In Hyperborea, where the goddess is, in the highest paradise, Our Lady received him and placed him in front of her face. The flying machine landed on the Hyperborean sun. Its shadow withdrew from the earth, and the divine light reigns again." That's what he interpreted it as being. So if the goddess needs to put Enoch in front of her face, it's because he is much smaller than her. Otherwise, she would put him in front of her, not in front of her face. The image of the Lord is always gigantic. The representations of God in Christianity iconography make him a gigantic being. The Bible teaches us that the patriarchs, endowed with hallucinatory longevity that is counted in centuries, and also enjoyed a comfortable size, which can be estimated to be between 3 and 4 meters. The Verlan is a sacred language, like all the slangs, which are not only the living part of a language, but also its most significant part, since it marries the slightest variations of the popular sensibility. Each one gets his idea by the path that suits him, and after which the language of the birds gives its verdict: history, of removing the ultimate doubt. As for relevance of the equation, he says, it seems to me that if you're hesitant, I suggest an ultimate resort to the language of the birds. These two words in French are each other verlan. It doesn't work well in English, he says. All right, so he's referring to Genesis giants, obviously. He's also referring to some very ancient legends from various locations of the world. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.